Well, the outcome of Tuesday's U.S. election will have implications for both the United States and global economies. Analysts from the Economist Intelligence Unit expect both candidates' policies to keep the U.S. economy fundamentally strong, though Donald Trump's policies may raise inflation and widen the fiscal deficit more compared to Kamala Harris. Now, in trade, Harris is likely to have a primary focus on China, while Trump is leaning toward broad tariffs. Both could raise prices for U.S. consumers and also affect U.S. exports if other economies respond with countermeasures. Now, internationally, Trump's policies may produce economic disruptions due to a stronger dollar. His is a more isolationist stance. Harris's approach is expected to maintain stronger ties with Europe and support for multilateral institutions. Let's take a deeper dive into what's really at stake from an economic standpoint. And for that, we're going to turn to Michael Collins. He's CEO of WinCap Financial and an adjunct faculty member at Endicott College in Massachusetts. Good to see you again.
Hi, Sean. How you doing?
Good, good. A little anxious. It's going to be a very long day, I think, for a lot of journalists across the country. But I want to start by sort of taking the pulse of the U.S. economy, where we are, and more importantly, perhaps, let's examine from your standpoint, how do you think the everyday person feels about the economy right now, taking into consideration past inflation, gas prices, food prices?
Yeah, the economy is really still fairly strong. The latest jobs numbers was a bit of an anomaly because of the impacts of hurricanes and some larger labor strikes, but PCE inflation came in at an annual rate of about 2.1%, close enough to the Fed's target. GDP came in at 2.8, a reasonably strong number. So, and unemployment, is at 4.1%. Nothing there strikes to us as an alarming issue when it comes to the economy overall. Now, when it comes to the consumer, the story is a little bit different. We think the biggest pain point for the consumer is the absolute level of inflation over the last 4 years compared to the number the economists use over the last 12 months. So I think that's the biggest difference between how people feel versus the actual numbers.
But how they feel is going to be important, and we know that Donald Trump has been starting many of his rallies by saying, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? So what are voters' biggest concerns as they get ready to go into that all-important voting booth and cast their ballot?
Yeah, I always think that's a funny question to ask, especially today, because I know 4 years ago I was stuck at home for the most part. So if you asked me if I was better off 4 years ago, I'd say I don't think the answer would be yes. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge, and I think it's funny when people said, are you better off 4 years ago? I'm like, 4 years ago is pretty bad. So, I think that's a big concern.
What about housing prices, rents, the ability to buy that first home? Where does this weigh in?
Yeah, home prices are certainly a challenge for new buyers, and rent prices are an especially big challenge for new renters. But anyone who's owned their home for more than 2 years has experienced great appreciation in their homes and is probably locked into an interest rate below 3%. So this push and pull with people wanting prices to come down, I'm sure if you ask them, do you want the value of your home to come down 20%? People would say, wait, that's the inflation I want to keep.
Yeah. Okay, recap Harris and Trump's final economic pitches. How are they proposing they're going to help Americans with pocketbook matters?
Yeah, so Harris' campaign has been focusing on tax breaks for new businesses, tax credits for home buyers. I think being a more fair player in the global economic trade world. Trump has suggested broad tariffs for imports to protect American jobs, as well as some policies to target certain demographics, such as no taxes on tips, no taxes on Social Security, and no taxes on overtime.
Everybody wants a tax cut, and both candidates are promising just that. But the sobering reality really is that Harris's plan, Trump's plan, are going to increase the national debt by trillions of dollars. What's the concern there?
Well, we've been around long enough to know that the promises made by any politician in their political campaign, more than half of those don't become reality. So you have to kind of dissect what's real from what is actually likely to happen, which there's usually a large disconnect. between those two.
It's going to be interesting. Okay, look ahead to the next Fed meeting and interest rates. No election surprise, whatever happens at the next Fed meeting. But where do you think things stand? Because the Fed has been very clear it wants to be motivated by actual numbers and not by any political rhetoric from the outside.
Yeah, so we think for sure the Fed cuts on Thursday and very likely in December. What's in play today and what you're seeing in the bond market is that 2025 is the big question mark. There should be about 4 cuts in 2025.
Wow.
But that's going to depend on the data that comes out. And as we've seen when the Fed first started saying they were going to cut rates because of the strength of the economy, really because of the strength of the consumer, those expectations were pushed back. And we view that as a champagne problem. If they have to slow down the pace of rate cuts because the economy is so great, we don't think that's a bad thing. And then this also gives them the dry powder. Should there be any kind of hiccup, they have plenty of ammo to cut rates going forward.
The consumer really has been resilient throughout this whole thing. So quickly, we only have about 45 seconds left. What kind of economy is the next president, whomever it is, what kind of economy will that president inherit?
A much tougher one, because this economy is walking on much more of a tightrope. If we get a pickup in unemployment, that would certainly be a challenge. When unemployment starts to rise significantly, it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle. We haven't seen that yet, but it's certainly a possibility.
Okay, Michael Collins, good stuff. Thank you very much. We appreciate this on election eve here in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.